Okay, guys, here's what we're going for. Looks kind of like the default project, but guess what? It's not. He just transitioned into combat mode, and now he's going to transition out of combat mode into default mode, where he can walk around, the camera can explore, and all sorts of great things can happen. But wait, there's an enemy. He lines up on him, or maybe he's not. Either way, you push the fire button, there's a delay, and then he fires. You can toggle on and off the combat mode, and you will notice that the crosshair does not jerk out to the side. Rather, it glides out to the side because it's using a graph with a scale. And I'll show you all how to use that. There are many other features. It's kind of hard to explain, so I'm going to go ahead and show you. But this system will pretty much work it definitely works, but it'll work in many different scenarios. So, like, let's say you've already picked up a weapon, and you saw when we picked up a weapon, he went right into combat mode. But let's say you're scavenging and you want to pick up more weapons. Oh, he doesn't go into combat mode. Why is that? Because wouldn't it be annoying if you're out looking around for stuff and you already decided you don't want to be in combat mode? Well, then you don't have to worry about that. It fixes that problem. but if somebody comes around the corner, boom, he's gone. And you can manually do it, and that way you don't have the delay. But the penalty for not triggering combat mode manually is you have a slight delay. But this is good, so it's not just, for shooter games. This could be exploration type games, doing whatever. It gives you a free roam ability to look around. And when you're in combat mode, you're locked in like this. But how annoying would it be to explore a whole world in this mode? I mean, the animation alone is not annoying. It's everything else with it. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get into this. I just want to let you guys know this one's going to be tough. I mean, there's no way around it. This is experimental. It's new to me. It was something I never could do before. But, as time goes on, you get better and better. And so now I can do it, and it's fresh. So that means it's going to be a little rusty. So bear with me. It'll be good. It'll be worth it. It'll definitely be worth it. You'll also see me transitioning to the finished project a lot. Don't freak out if you don't have all of the features immediately. That's just because I need to show you something about what we're trying to do, and I can't demo it on the spot. So you'll see me jump back and forth between a finished project and an unfinished project. So it's just how we're going to have to do this one. Anyway, here's where we left off. We left off with the guy who just is always in combat mode. His arms are always out like he has a gun, but he doesn't until he goes over and picks it up. So let's go ahead and dig in. So let's start with our third-person character. Go ahead and select him. Open the blueprint editor. And here we are. And I've already lied to you. Go to your project settings. So third-person example, go to settings, project settings. Go to your input. And we're going to make... and so in addition to triggering the weapon by firing, you're going to have a button just for it. So press your action mappings button and call this whatever you want. Combat mode. You could say, here, let me get this. Combat mode. And it's really going to be a toggle, so it's going to go either way. Combat mode or combat mode toggle. And make it whatever you want. Okay, I'm going to use caps lock because I'm weird. You can make it whatever you want. Doesn't matter. So caps lock is going to be my combat mode. Go back into your third-person character, and up above where you fired, this is a good spot because we're going to need to reference some stuff down here eventually later on. So go ahead and just right-click and say combat mode. All right, the first thing you want to do before you can enter combat mode or not is you need to see if you even have a weapon. So just right-click and check for spawned weapon. Get spawned weapon. We want to get a reference, and we want to go ahead and check if it's valid. So right off of here, drag off, is valid. Okay. And this is the part I always forget. I test this knowing I put this in here, and I'll be like, why isn't it working? Why isn't it working? Well, I didn't pick up a weapon yet. You may find yourself in the same boat. Make sure you picked up a weapon as you're testing this to make sure, because you're going to be testing whether your controller's controlling things or whether your character's controlling directions. So anyway, you'll see what I mean. And I have a habit of always doing that. So first thing, let's create a bool that's going to decide whether we're in combat mode or not. Bool is a simple yes, no variable, and we'll call it, guess what? Combat mode. All right, combat mode. Go ahead and get that. And we're going to want to branch. So press B, left click. And here's how that's going to go. So if we're already in combat mode, it's doing a check. So it's saying, are you in combat mode? If you are in combat mode already, we want to transition you out of combat mode. See, already it's confusing, okay? So if you're in combat mode, and it's true, that's when all of our settings are going to be going non-combat mode, or as I'm going to call it, default mode, okay? So I think of default, I think of exploring, I think that's cool, and I'm wondering, no, it's not going to let me do it yet. I'm going to add a comment box to keep our heads straight on this. Actually, maybe it'll let me loop that in there a little bit. Maybe. Nope. Let me try it. I highlight C, and I'm just kind of going to drag it up and over. And like that. And we're going to have a lot of code. So whoo, bring it way over there. Let's highlight the whole thing. There we go. And most importantly, color it. Because I got to see things. I'm very visual. Let's call this default mode. Okay, and then let's see if it'll let us do another one already. When I did this before, I didn't do it, and I kept confusing myself. Comment. Oh, I should have just okay. Call it combat mode. All right, and. Perfect, just like this. Okay, drag it out. Okay. And combat mode, let's give it the color of red. Okay. So, if combat mode is false, we're going to come down here. And we're going to make it combat mode. If it's true, we're going to be nice and cool and go into default mode. Okay, we got that set up. So we have already checked if we have a weapon. We've checked if we're in combat mode or not. So the first thing we're going to want to do is turn on and off our crosshair depending on which mode we're in. So go ahead and get your crosshair reference, right click. Cross ref, get crosshair reference. Boom, got it. And off of this, and I'm always going to be looking, you see me looking over here, I'm looking over at my notes, because like I said, you should see this. It's a freaking tangled mess of a nightmare over here. Okay, so crosshair reference, we're going to set visibility. Okay, so like the notes say, or like the color says, this makes it really easy to think, okay? So you don't have to think about, oh my, combat mode. I know, wait, it's blue. I know things are calming down. Things are good. I don't need my crosshair out, so it can be hidden. We're good. We're nice and calm. But if we're in the other way, and I'm going to divide these up, so I could just drag off of here, but I want to do it separately. I did the same dang thing. Get crosshair reference. I might want to do these in separate functions, and if I am tagging off of these guys, it'll just make it all the more complicated down the road. So let's make it easier on ourselves. Set visibility. And since we're in combat, we want it to be visible because we're in red. See? The color, it helps me anyway. All right. Now that we're here, there's many different ways we can set our defaults, okay, as to where our crosshair's at. You know, when we start the game, it's on. We want the opposite of that. We want it to be off. And there's a lot of different ways we could have set that. But how I'm going to do it, we could go to the widget and we could set it visible, but I want it to be very plain and out in the open. So I'm going to see if I can find where we set that. I think it was event begin play, somewhere around there. So if you type in event begin play, there can only be one. So it's going to take you to wherever you put your event begin play when you try to call it. and you say we have the create crosshair event, and we made a little custom event even though we didn't need to make one. And then we have a little function for it right here. And, you could even back out of this a little bit, and you could go right over here, create crosshair widget. You could say get crosshair reference. I should have just copied it to my clipboard. It would have been so much easier than typing it out 3 times. But anyway, crosshair reference. We're just going to over here after our this is from our event begin play. Set your visibility to hidden. Okay, because we want, when we start the game, we want our crosshair hidden. Because we don't have a weapon, we have no reason to have a crosshair. Now, this is what we're going to be doing throughout this entire tutorial, is setting things back to how they were before we did all this coding. And it's going to be actually one of the hardest things, is to get all those values captured into variables. And you'll see what I mean. Get them captured into variables and then resetting everything back to default. It gets very dicey. So let's go back to where we were, up to our nice red and blue. Okay. So very important step, easy to miss, but this is the money here for this tutorial. This is a good one right here. We want to make it so that, okay, I'm going to be referencing a thing you don't have yet. So just so you can see what this does in the end. So when you pick up your gun, okay, I'm just going to face, let's see, my character is going to be facing, let's say this is south, okay? So he faces south, he picks up the weapon, and the camera is going to face south, and you are going to face south. So watch. Pick it up, okay, and he's facing south, see? I turned around. That is what we're about to set. And it's very important to do it the way I'm about to show you, or else if you mess it up, you could have your character turning around, you could have a whole bunch of weird stuff. But what it's actually doing is it's taking the controller, which is your mouse input, and it's in a split second driving it behind the character, so that way when he goes into combat mode, your camera is in the exact position it needs to be, and then he goes into the combat mode. Otherwise, when you tell it to do the other functions that make it go into this mode, he would whip around to your controller's position, which is in front of the character, which would then make him turn around. I know I'm giving you a lot of logic, but I'm trying to get you to understand what this next little bit of code is. Very small, but it's very important. And I encourage you to play around with it. So to do this, we're going to be manipulating the controller, which is your mouse, or whatever you want to think of it as, your mouse, an actual controller, whatever. Get player controller. And here's the thing I want you to think about with the controller, the little theory. This thing is always like with you. I mean, when you're doing like modern games, not doing like split screen stuff and jumping all around, this is always you. Like when your character can die, right? And you get assigned a new character, it spawns in or whatever, but you're always this player controller 0 here. Okay, and you're like, well, the other player, well, how is he player controller 0? Well, he's his own player controller 0 on his computer. Okay, you're the only one. So that, just keep that in the back of your head as you're doing this. So I'm going to drag off there, and I'm going to set control rotation. This is a very important function. This function right here is the only way you can actually, if you have it set so that your controller controls how your character turns, the only way to override his turning ability is with this function. So you can use this for a lot of things. So here's an example. You're trying to turn your character, and he's not turning for some reason. You've told it set rotation or something silly like that. You've tried to set him to turn, and he's not turning. Use set control rotation, because if you have it set to like, I'm trying to use controller desired rotation. If you have that as true, you're not going to be able to override it with trying to turn that capsule around. Something to keep in the back of your mind when you're doing your own coding and stuff. So set control rotation. So what's the rotation going to be? Very important. Camera boom, not camera. Camera boom. Get this. You're going to set it to your camera boom's world rotation, not relative rotation, world rotation. So drag off of here, get world rotation. Okay, easy to mess up, easy to forget about. There we go. Now what we're going to do, we're going to get a reference to our character movement component. Remember, this is something that that Epic has coded into the game. It's a whole bunch of coding that decides how the character moves, and it's weird. So I'm going to get it, I'm going to drag it, and I'm going to tell you why it's weird. So I could not find a way to replicate this variable, so I have to set it on the client as well as the server. If somebody finds another way to do this, let me know. The only way I found to do it is by setting it on the client like we're about to do, and then setting it on the server. Very unusual, but it's unusual in itself because it's not like your typical variable, right? It's a component that has a bunch of stuff in it. Anyway, long story short, let's make this thing do something. So what we want to do is we want to set our orient, rotation, movement, and we want to set our orient, rotation to movement, and we also want to set use controller desired rotation. Okay, and I'll explain these in just a moment, but before I royally screw this up, I want to make sure I get these variables set right. There. Control C, Control V. It's going to be the opposite up here. And like I said, we're going to have separate references, so Control C this guy. And Control V it right here. I'm going to run them right into there. Okay. And I'm going to hook up right here. And I'm going to explain all this in just a second. Compile, save. We're at a good save point. Go ahead and save. Okay, so what the heck is this? Well, if you remember, see? Easy to make mistakes, especially when you're trying to explain stuff. We set this at the beginning, very first few tutorials. What this does, orient rotation to movement, we have that off. The default character, when you started the default template, it had it on. So what that meant is the character would rotate depending on which direction he's going. When you're in combat, though, you don't have it that way. You go depending on where your mouse or your controller is deciding things go. Okay, that's how you're deciding your movement. But if you're in Explorer mode, you don't want the camera controlling or the controller rotating, determining where the character is. You want his movement to control where it is. So let's go orient, rotation, and movement. We don't want that for combat, but we do want the controller to determine where we're facing, in other words. And just the opposite when we're going to non-combat or default mode. We want to have our character wherever he turns to control his direction, and we don't want the controller to control the camera. We want, we don't want the controller to control the character. We want it to control the camera. So you can spin around and look at your character. You can see what's going on behind you. That's what that does. Okay? So, that's set. Now, almost messed up again. So what we want to do is set up our defaults to be this, because when we start the game, we want it to have this setting right here. So let's go ahead and do that. Character movement, orient rotation to movement. We want to make it true. See how it's already false. And then under character movement, use controller desired rotation. We want to make to false. I guarantee you, I screw up today. It's going to be forgetting to set something back to its default. Okay, so the next thing is, remember when we made our character, this was just a couple videos ago, and I've selected the mesh here, and we rotated him slightly. This would be if you're behind him. We rotated him slightly to the right, so that way you could see his weapon really well, and the laser angle wouldn't be so extreme. And we made this Z value a -81. Go ahead and select that, and Control C it. And in fact, what you can do is, if you're sure you have it, you could set it back to its default, which is -90. Watch what he does. Okay, it makes him face forward. When we're walking around normally, we want him facing forward when he doesn't have a weapon. And when we start the game, we're walking around normally, so it's going to be at -90. Now, you have the -81 value saved, and you're going to make that into a variable. Okay? So compile, save, go to your event graph. And what we want to do is the mesh is just what we were talking about. You're going to drag out a little reference to it right here. And you're going to set relative rotation. Okay? You're going to do that twice. Control C, Control V. Okay, so when we're going into war, when we're going into combat, that's when we want to have that funky rotation we just saved. So go ahead and promote to a variable right here and call it combat mode car rot for a combat mode character rotation. Compile, save, and then the Z location, actually, let's just double check. I'm sorry, go to your viewport. Mesh, and the Z, that's where we changed it. Go to your event graph, combat mode character rot, Control V, and it didn't carry over. Wonderful. Control V, and it didn't carry over. That's fine, no big deal. Just type in -81. Okay, double check that guy, he didn't want to change for me. Okay, so we should be there. We should be good there. Now, we could hard code these values, but why would you do that? Like, you want to be able to change stuff down the road, right? You don't want to set your game up to be my game and my game to be yours. You want to make your own game. So you're going to change these variables, and you're not going to want mysterious hard coded things. And by hard coded would be if you went in here and set it. So let's go ahead and promote this to a variable and say default. I don't know if I use default mode. Yeah, just do default car rot. Default car rot. Compile and save that. And that one's -90. Compile, save. Okay. Darn it, I hate it when they crisscross like that. Drives me nuts. Okay. And we can double check our here. See, I didn't even need to go to our character, but I guess I wanted to show you. So -90, we're good there. Okay. What's up next? What's up next is freaking awesome. It's probably like the coolest thing ever. It's also one of the harder things to do. That's what this is all about. So we're going to go in right here and say new timeline or not. I'm sorry, add timeline. Remember that. Add timeline. And we could call this default timeline, which is kind of vague, but default cross timeline, because this is what we're going to be doing. Yeah, why not? Whole thing. Default cross timeline. What this is going to be is this is going to help us set how the crosshair moves back and forth into position. What do I mean? Oops, see, I can't show you this because that's not ready yet. You need to go into play here. Okay, this is not the one you have yet. This right here is a project that I already completed. So we're setting up the time that crosshair takes to come in, or I'm sorry, out and go back in. And that nice fluid movement. I'm going to allow you to make it as slow or as fast as you want. Okay, and help sync it up with your animation. That's what we're working on. You don't have that yet. So what do we do? Okay, so drag this off. Make sure, and I'm just doing it ahead of time so we don't mess it up, into your play from start. Okay. Double click on your timeline. Okay. Compile, save. So what are we actually doing in here? Well, we're going to make a graph. Okay. And this graph, it's going to be a float graph. It's going to be controlling the value of a number between 0 and 1. So it's going to have decimals like 0.1, 0.2, 0.3 over a length of time. And it's going to spit it out. And that's what we want, because we want an ever increasing or decreasing value to come out. And that's going to determine how fast our crosshair moves around, okay, for lack of a better word. So we're going to add a float track, okay, and we're going to set its time. I'm going to set its time for 0.15, which is pretty fast, but I don't like it taking forever. So let me try that again. 0.15. Tab. There it goes. Gives you this little thing. Now you can make it fit your screen, I believe, if you press. Well, there was some button around here somewhere. I'm just going to compile and save this. These buttons right here. I think we got to get some numbers on there first, though. So just right click, add a key to float, and set its time for 0. And its value is already set for 0, so we're good. We're going to add another key to float. We're going to set its time to 1 second, or sorry, 0.5 seconds, because that's the whole time we're going, and we're going to set its value to 1. Okay, and this is the time where you would push the zoom to fit horizontally and vertically. Okay, and we got it right here. We're going to add one more, add another key, and we're going to set its time halfway between that, which is roughly 0.075 seconds. And a value of 0.5. Not 5.6, 5. Okay. So as time progresses, the value increases. That's all this is doing. As time progresses this way, value increases that way. And as it's doing that, it's spitting out the value that's represented by this line. So the value keeps going up and up and up and up and up as time progresses. That's all it is. Seems complex, but it's really just giving you a dumb float. So select that, shift select this one, shift select this one, right click over the middle one, and then say auto. And then it gives you these little handles here, and you can control how it flows. So you can say, it's not, at first it's not so fast, and then it really takes off, and then it slows back down. You could do all sorts of really cool stuff like this. You could totally manipulate health meters and stuff, and so instead of when you get hit it jerks down real fast, it could be like more fluid, so lots of cool stuff you could do with this. Anyway, that's that. Let's go back to the event graph, and that should be pretty much set up. So it's playing it when we come in, it's always playing it from the start, and then on update it's going to do something, and it's going to spit out this new track 0, and we didn't name it, so let's double click on it. I forget where we name it. Where do we name it? Oh, it's somewhere here. I can't remember where the name is. It's going to drive me absolutely insane. I know when you first start it, it comes up and it asks you, okay, do you want to name this? And I just skipped right past it. But the value coming out, it's not that big of a deal, but it's going to drive me crazy the rest of this tutorial not knowing where in the world I find that. You can probably see it. Anyway, all right, I'm just going to have to get past it. All right, so it's flowing out of here. So what do we do with these numbers? Well, we do something else. I think this is a new concept. We're going to do a lerp, which sounds like a made-up word. Okay, and we're going to do a lerp by vector. Okay, and a vector is simply 2 points in 3D space. X, Y, and that's why the X, Y, and Z, right? It's 2 different points. And so as time goes through, let me compile and save. Maybe I can pop it up. No, I can't. Okay. As time goes through this thing, and the value is ticking away, it's changing. It's going to be going between one value and another value, and it's going to spit out a third value. So it's like transitioning between 2 different numbers, and it's giving that number. That's all this is. It's kind of weird. You got to think about it, look it up if to get the concept a little more solidified. I don't always say it the best way. So what are you exactly going to be transitioning between? Well, it's going to be the camera's location. Okay, so it looks like it's the crosshair that's moving back and forth, but in fact, it's your camera's location. Now, some people would say, "Oh, I'll just transition between cameras." I don't think it looks as smooth. I know some people can do it. I don't know. I don't think it looks as good. We're just going to move the camera. Okay, so we're only dealing with one camera. I don't want like a whole screen over here full of cameras. I want one camera, and when I go into combat mode, I want it to come out behind his right shoulder. You could also set it for left shoulder. We'll do that later. But it's going to go in combat mode. Camera's going to come out to his right shoulder. And that way you can see down the middle of the screen with his crosshairs. And then when he comes out of combat mode, he goes right back behind him. But it's going to maintain its elevation. So let's do that. So let's just make our variables first. So right click, promote to a variable, and we'll call it combat cam for camera boom vector. Combat camera boom vector. Okay? And since we're going from combat and then we're going into calm, right? We're in the blue. We're going from combat to calm. We're going to promote this to a variable. And we're going to call it default cam boom. All right? So we're transitioning between these two values. What are the values? Good question. Go to your camera boom. And by the way, the camera boom, it's that red line that goes all the way back to your camera. It controls how it retracts when you hit objects in the world space. It's supposed to help you from, seeing through walls and all that sort of stuff. It's very important. So what we're going to do, we're going to get that camera boom, and these values right here are the values that need to go into your combat mode. I'm going to double check on my notes. -double 61, 33, and 58. That is correct. So let's do that. You can do a little snip so you remember what they are, or you can just copy them directly. So copy, combat boom, paste into here. See if it works this time. Oh, what do you know? It decided it liked me. Camera boom, not camera. 33, copy, combat boom, select it. Paste, 33. Camera boom, 58. Copy. Combat boom, 58. It should be. Paste. Great. So, what's our default camera going to be? Well, it's not going to be exactly how the game was when we started, because I don't want to jerk around the player too much. I want to keep everything zeroed out except for its height. I think it's too low in the default. So I'm going to go ahead and add its height in there. So there you go. So now it's going to be transitioning between these two values. Okay. And then it's going to be manipulating the camera boom itself. So let's get that. This is what we're doing between combat and default. And we want to go ahead and drag off of here and set relative location. Set relative location. Okay. File, save. Easy spot to mess up, so pay attention. On update is where this is going to fire. Not on finished. At finished, that means we're going to go aboard the server. And I'm going to tell it to do that, but we're not doing that yet. So update, we go right into here like this. Okay. So easy to mess this up too. Don't forget to connect this float line in here just like this. So let's copy what we have. Control C. Let's go down here, Control V. Let's drag it on over. And let's connect. Remember, play from start, or else it'll only work one time. Okay, and what are we going to change? So these are going to be the opposite. So let's just do the hover over here, Control select and drag down into B, and then drag this one up into A. And so what does that do? Okay, it goes from default into combat. That's because we're red. So we're going from default right into combat. Compile, save all. Okay, we haven't even gotten onto the server yet. Okay. So we did all these fantastical things. I'm trying to just, come on. We had one more thing we did to make it look like we were in combat mode. And that was we literally rotated the follow camera out just a little bit. This guy, we angled him. You can see his value. Click off him, on him. This Z value right here. Copy that. Let's see if it'll let you copy it. We sent him out. So go to your event graph, and we're going to want to do something very similar. So I'm going to look at my notes. The great thing about this is we can drag off of here. So let's just drag right off of. We're going to use this timeline, and we're going to go into another lerp. Okay, and we're going to do a lerp rotator. Okay, drag this over here, and see, we'll just copy and paste. It'll be fine. So our lerp rotator. So we're going to go from one to the other. So we're going to go from combat to default. So let's go ahead and set our combat up. Let's promote this to a variable, and we'll call it combat cam rotation. All right, and then we will promote this to a variable, and we'll call this default cam rotation. All right, so our combat cam is already set. This value, we copied it. It's in the Z. Combat cam rotation. You gotta compile and save before you can see it. In the Z, let's see if it allowed it. Where did it get that value? Like, I don't know, Unreal. You're killing me. Where is it? Follow camera. Copy. Combat camera. Paste. Okay. Something, I'm guessing, something if the variable hasn't been created yet, you can't paste it. I don't know. I don't know what's going on with this. The default value, I believe, is zeroed out. I'll check my notes. Yeah, and it is. And we could just hard code it 0, but like I said, you might have a better idea of what you want for your game, and you might want to set that later. So then what does this do? This is going to get the follow camera. It's going to set its relative rotation. Set relative rotation. Bam. And line it up just like that. Okay. So, I think we got that. So let's do what we did just similar to last time. Let's copy this. Control C. Control V. Let's drag this out. Let's hook it up. And very, very important, once again, don't forget to connect this guy, or else you're going to have major problems. Connect him up right there. Now, we're doing the same damn thing, and that's not what we want. We want them to be opposite. So we're going from we want to switch these around. So boom like that, and then boom like that, and then stack them up so you don't confuse yourself the right way. So we're going from default cam rotation to combat cam rotation because we're in red, combat. And we're coming from combat cam rotation to default cam rotation because everything's calm and great and life is awesome. Okay. So let's compile, save all. I think at this point, you still couldn't see anything because we haven't gone on the server yet. Unless maybe you were only the server. So if you click off here, if you were to press play, first I want to check something. I noticed this earlier. This could be nothing. Access done trying to read property crosshair reference third person character. I'm curious about that. Where that error came from. Is it not going to tell me exactly where it was in the set visibility? Okay, so this could be crosshair reference is set right here, but it's saying it didn't access it. And this could be something that clears up later down the road. But let's try this. Let's just break this here, and I have no idea why this would be doing this. But let's just go over here, and let's go in our create crosshair right here. And let's get our crosshair reference and see if I can just go set visibility. See if this does it. The hidden, and I'm not going to connect it up yet. I'm just curious. I'm going to press play. Okay, that error went away, so we know that's the problem. Compile, save, press play. Huh. It's fine now. I have no idea what that is. I'm going to investigate that. Why outside of this function, it didn't seem to recognize it. Very interesting. But either way, we solved the problem. When he starts back up, he does not have the crosshair. Now you're going to say, well, he looks exactly the same, but we're going to do some checks. So use the server only. Make sure it's the server. We're just going to check a couple things. Okay. So this is good. I know it looks jacked up, but he is actually moved. This is the way we want his camera to be moving. Now, when he walks over and picks up, see, he should be moving all weird like this. This is fine. When he walks over and picks up a weapon, then it should have gone into combat mode. And this could be because it's just not set on the server properly. Okay, you have to hit caps lock. I forgot that part. There you go. We haven't set all the little triggers that do all the cool little things that make him automatically go into combat mode. We'll get to there eventually. But so he's in combat mode. Now he's should be out of combat mode. So it looks like we still have some things to set. So at least we know he went into there properly, and all appears to be working. But let's go ahead and set it on the server, and we'll keep double checking. This one's going to be a long one, just getting everything set properly. So let's continue on and make sure we have these guys set right. That's off and that's on. Okay, so from here, we're going to make 2 custom events. And here's how we're going to set them. We're going to say right here on this one, combat mode true to server, because it was true and we want to set it to false. It's a little confusing, but we're going to set it. So right click, custom event, add custom event, and we're going to call it, let's see here. Let's zoom in a little bit. Combat mode true to server. And it was combat mode was true. So say run on server and reliable. Compile, save. And right click over here. Combat mode, or I'm sorry, just do a custom event. Combat mode false to server. Okay. And I jacked up the name a little bit. Delete here. O. Select it. Run on server reliable. Okay, and you're going to think these names are a little backwards, but I'm going to explain it once you go through. So, if your combat mode was true when you initially went through, it still is true. You haven't technically set it to false. So you need to come into combat mode, need to get it. I'm sorry, you need to set it. Combat mode, you need to set it. You need to set it to false. Okay, so combat mode was true. Now combat mode can be set to false. We're going to do just the opposite down here. Combat mode was false, so we're going to set it to true. A little backwards, I know, but it's the only way to make it logically flow. Okay, so remember how I said these movement components were weird? Well, we're going to have to set them on the server as well. So let's do that. Let's drag these over here. I just want to get these. Let's see if it lets me do that. Control C. I'll try and get them over here. Control V. And it copied the whole dang thing. That's okay. We can just move these over here. Drag it over here. Make sure nothing else is on it. No, nothing. Delete. And it's going to be the same. So if combat mode is false, orient rotation to movement, we want that true. And we want the use controller desired rotation, set that to false. Somebody's ready for dinner. Okay. And we get this plugged in just like that. Okay, so if we're going into combat mode, we want to orient rotation to movement false, and we want to use our controller to get our movement. Okay. Compile, save. Save all. Now let's just take a look at what's going on so far. Okay, that's the mode. That's kind of how we want it to be. We'll fix it up nice and neat later. He's going to come over here. He's going to pick up a weapon, and we're going to press caps lock, and then he goes into the mode. Then you're going to take it off. Oh, I'm sorry. And it's still not doing this. This is probably has to do with how we have some of the animations set up. So let's continue on. What we need to do is make sure our other settings are back to their default. So let's go to the mesh. He's at -90. We need to double check, make sure our follow camera, it's at that -3, and we need that to be zeroed out. So let's do that. Okay, and then our camera boom, we need that to be, it was everything zeroed out except for the height. And these are our default settings. And compile and save that. One last thing I wanted to check also is that timeline. Okay, that looks good. All right. Double check where we're at. Doing all sorts of crazy stuff. It picks up the weapon. Caps lock is on. Okay, it's flowing out. I don't think that's how it should be going. Let me see what we may have mistakenly done. All right, I had to cut the camera for just a few seconds. I lied. I had to cut the camera for about 2 minutes and figure out exactly what was going on. My camera was you know, you saw it. It was bopping back and forth. I was like, what's going on here? Simple mistake. And if you know, you're not learning if you're not making mistakes, I guess. But we simply didn't run it onto the server. Yeah, I made the server over here, but I didn't run it on the server. So I had to call that basically. Combat mode true to server. So just drag off a finished, say combat mode true to server. So it bops over here. Okay. And then we're going to come over here and say combat mode false to server. All right, so I click over here, and then combat mode false to server. Mode true to server, true to server. Okay, so first off, I'm going to show you that it works. Okay, you pick up your gun. He's acting all wacky because you're not in combat mode yet. You press caps lock. He goes into combat mode. Then he's out of combat mode. goes back into combat mode. He's out of combat mode. Face him whichever direction you want. Make your camera the opposite. Okay, say he's facing this dude. Turn around like this. It should go to him, point at him, and then boom, it's pointing at him. Okay, so obviously this is unfinished, completely unfinished, but this is a good breaking point. This is a good stop point. You know, go get yourself a cup of coffee, do whatever. And in the next video, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to clear all this stuff up. We're going to get it so it actually, when he picks up the weapon, he automatically goes into combat mode. Number 2, the laser you don't want to show. And also we want to make it so when he fires, it actually will cause him to go into combat mode. I know this is a hard tutorial. In very many ways, easy to mess it up. I messed it up right there at the end, just getting those little calls to the server. Very easy to mess up. And there may be bugs that we correct later on. So that's it for now. I'll see you on the next one.